Okay, welcome everybody. I can see people jumping into the session now, so thanks for joining. This is the third episode of our October webinar series on change drivers for Australian businesses, and hopefully you've had a chance to catch some of the previous sessions on SD-WAN and threat defence. Today we're taking a look at hybrid IT, sharing some new ideas on how you can approach. I'll just quickly introduce our speakers and then we'll get started. We have Naren McClung, our Group CTO. Many of you on the session will be familiar with Naren and knows that he sets the technological direction and pace at Viatek. Is a big advocate of the software-defined approach, help businesses become more agile and responsive to change. And Naren is joined by Pat Devlin, Sales Director at HPE, a self-confessed user and abuser of technology and social media junkie, but more importantly, Pat's been building technology businesses for decades and has helped many organisations of all sizes make the transition from traditional platforms to IT systems of the future. So welcome, Pat.
Thank you, Prue.
And then in the chat station, we have David Jacobs, affectionately known here as DJ, Senior Technical Consultant at Viatek. So on a daily basis, DJ works with customers, helping them understand the right hybrid mix for the business. So don't be shy in sending him your questions. Okay, Naren, over to you.
Thanks very much, Prue. Okay, so as mentioned, this is the third in our series, or second last, of webinars that really are around addressing business change using emerging technologies. We have a session coming up, I think, in a bit over a week, covering the death of ISDN and the emergence of UC as a service, so that should be good, and previous topics that are now available, where we've covered off SD-WAN and a very proud partnership with VeloCloud, as well as threat defence, which yesterday, where we work closely with WatchGuard as a platinum partner. So hopefully you'll find this webinar interesting, and if you had managed to join the other webinars or will join us for the last webinar, that you find that interesting as well. Okay, so the cloud shift. I'm very fortunate at Viatek, and I often brag that I think I have the best job in the business. The reason why I think that is I get to travel around and I get to speak to customers and I get to talk about real business challenges. And that's really where the conversation needs to be. It needs to be really focused on the business. So I'm lucky to be able to have those conversations. And I pick up on changes in attitude, particularly around the way applications and services have typically been hosted. And what I'm seeing and what's becoming fairly consistent is that now this idea of location-centric service or application hosting is now less of a concern. So what does that mean? Really good example takes me back to my time when I was working in the United Kingdom and working for the Royal Bank of Scotland. And as a sort of a shiny-faced guy, I was trying to get this idea across that Office 365 would be a great idea. Boy, was that a challenge. Challenge for RBS, and I was dealing with the risk people at the time, trying to convince them of the relative merits of moving outside of their trusted perimeter and considering the use of a third-party or external service provider to deliver fairly commoditized services like email. Boy, was that a struggle. But the mindset at the time was very much that unless that application or service was managed within their trusted perimeter, that you couldn't trust it. So some real security fears there, but absolutely related to trust. And trust, as it happens, builds gradually. So software as a service or Office 365 tends to lead to other things like platform as a service. And interestingly, thinking about RBS, they did make the decision in the end to go Office 365, and lo and behold, that led to consideration of other services delivered over the wire, connected services, but importantly, services delivered outside of that trusted perimeter. And I'm seeing a very similar thing. So I get to travel around, and the customers that I speak to are in both metro and regional parts of Australia. And Australia absolutely seems to be the embodiment of this evolution. Now, our friends in regional Australia have historically struggled with connectivity, and not just bandwidth, but also quality of connectivity as well. And I was in regional Victoria only a few weeks ago, in fact, talking about this exact scenario, and we had some real screenshots and use cases where it was really eye-opening using the VeloCloud technology to show just how poor the connectivity is in region. So even parking the fact that bandwidth wasn't where it needed to be, issues with jitter and packet loss, that unless you had the visibility using that Velo Cloud technology, you weren't going to know just how bad the connectivity was. The net result for the customers in region is that they don't trust services over the wire. They don't trust their bandwidth, and they don't trust that services can be delivered from any one location, be that private clouds, hybrid cloud environments, or public cloud service providers. So that was really quite eye-opening. So as connectivity improves and as trust in delivering services over the wire increases, location becomes irrelevant. Flexible consumption is then an idea that tends to creep in. The need for services to be both agile and responsive becomes more important. And you start to consider your service architecture as one to be modular and more containerized in design. And the consumer expectation really today is also changing off the back, and rightly so. Consumerization of IT, as consumers of IT at home, we expect certain things. We expect to be able to buy what we want, irrespective of where it lives, pay for it how we want, opt in or out as we choose, and essentially change or adapt as our business needs change. And that's exactly where we need to be. And I think as a service provider and as a managed service provider, Viatek absolutely has to meet that demand. So if I look at the work that we've done, certainly over the past 18 months, to really radically change the way we take services to the market, and this goes to the vendors that we work with, the services that we major with, but it's more a mindset change for Viatek. And if I look at our investment in software-defined technologies and the interrelationship between network and private cloud, I think it's really worth mentioning here that Viatek's entire cloud business, our private cloud and hosting business and hybrid cloud capabilities have been built pretty much entirely with HP Enterprise technology, which is a key reason as to why HP is supporting us today on this webinar. So we recognise that change in customer expectation and demand. We recognise that as an MSP, we have to be agile and responsive in meeting that demand. And we expect to be able to fall back within our data centres with technology that can adapt as we need it to, and that's why we partner with HPE. So with that, I think good segue to pass over to Pat, and Pat's going to offer the HPE perspective, hopefully against what we talked about.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Great setup. So what we wanted to talk about was and this idea of public cloud, private cloud, hybrid IT. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to give you a bit of background and maybe just establish who HPE are. I feel like everybody should probably know, but when you're in it, sometimes you forget how much of the message is out there or not. So if I skip forward one, the original HP, Bill Hewlett, Dave Packard, conjures up a different kind of an idea of a different era, just to look at these guys. But they are the original startup. We are the original startup. Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley because Dave Hewlett and Bill Packard started a company in their garage there. And we often talk about how important that startup culture is and how important it is to be inventing. HP and HPE are companies that have been inventing and had an engineering-first culture since the very first day. And, that's some 70, 80 years ago. And we've come a long way since then. If you are not aware, there are two HPs nowadays. So there's Hewlett-Packard and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. HP, without the E, they're the guys who make the printers and PCs and doing a great job. And HPE, the company that I represent, we make the infrastructure that kind of powers the world. So if we look at who trusts us, we are the world's #1 manufacturer of industry standard servers. We make the kind of stuff that powers some of the biggest industries in the world economy. Things like major hospitals, emergency departments, manufacturing plants, billion-dollar-a-day mines, stock exchanges, financial markets. We're a big company that people trust, that our innovative platform is the one to bet their business on. Now, what I didn't want to do today was dig into lots and lots of products and all the stuff we make. We make a lot of different things, but I kind of thought it would be a good idea as we talk about whether it's a good idea to own product or whether it's a good idea to subscribe to services. a bit of the pedigree of who we are, and just to make sure we've kind of established that. So, we're very lucky to have a partner in Viatek who've kind of bet their business on the partnership with the HPE. But if you look at, how do I kind of prove that to people when I talk in the market generally? When you think of smart people that you'll often think of brain surgeons and rocket scientists. So I like to talk about the literal rocket scientists, the guys at NASA. NASA are in the midst of planning their 7-year mission to Mars right now. And the last couple of years, they went out to look for a technology partner. And if you think about what's in it for someone like NASA, this is a 7-year mission. They're not looking at what we make today. They're looking at our roadmap of innovation for the next 7 years. And obviously, the reason I'm telling you the story is because NASA chose HPE to be their partner. And it's based not just on what we do today, but the vision we've painted for the future. And that's the kind of journey we ask our customers to come along with us on. So what's that got to do with public or private cloud? All of our innovation at the moment is built not just around making great products, but about the way people use those products. It's the way our customers want to work with us. And almost everybody we work with has a hybrid strategy. The reason we've leaned in so hard on hybrid IT is because that's what our customers want from us. That's what our partners want from us. So what we've done is not only build products that allow that to happen, but work with cost models, platforms, and management software. And all of our people are trained to talk about the best way to take advantage of that opportunity. So when we talk to people, in fact, when we talk to CIOs, one of the most common things they tell us after they've told us that it's really hard to find good people and they don't have any money, is that it's incredibly challenging to get the right mix of IT business alignment. And that sounds like one of those fuzzy things that hardware vendors talk about. But what it really means is that CIOs are being asked more and more to be business people rather than IT people. So gone are the days when your head of technology is the guy who makes sure all the tapes are changed in the backup system. Nowadays, as technologists, you're being asked to be more of a part of the business. You're a strategic competitive edge for the business that you're part of. And that piece is where that IT business alignment comes in. Is IT something that creates a competitive edge? Is IT aligned with the rest of the business, or is it just an operational resource? What's your experience with Viatek customers?
Yeah. I mean, look, conversations around technology for technology's sake just don't happen anymore, right? They used to happen, and as a sort of a nerd and technologist from way back, I like nothing more than to talk about technology. Doesn't happen anymore. I mean, the conversations I have are always around what's happening in your business, what's changing in your business, what do you expect from technology or services, and more importantly, what do you expect from Viatek as a service provider directly related to what's happening with your business. And they're the conversations I'm having today. And to be honest, that's the reason why we have to be so adaptive and so agile, is that we need to be able to change on a dime. As business needs change, elasticity of our services, flexibility in the way we architect our services is always oriented on business change.
And we see the same thing. So I think we're in good alignment there. So if you look at the top three, it's people, finding good people, having enough money, and it's IT business alignment. So if we go to the next one, they all kind of align. And what people are saying to us is we're stuck running our business when we really want to be transforming our business. And what we're investing in and what we're doing with our partnerships with companies like Viatek is trying to make it easier to transform and to be part of the business, get that IT business alignment piece going, and take away from the business of run, make that as easy as possible. So how do we do that? We've been working for the last few years on a product roadmap that allows you to participate in a different style of IT, no matter where you are in your journey. So we still have a lot of customers who like to buy our products, and we make great products. And if you like owning and running your stuff, we've got plenty of stuff for you. But more and more, our customers are asking us for stuff that kind of runs itself. There's a lot of buzzwords in the industry that talk about what this means. The one we use, and the coin we term, is something called composable. And what it means is it's the idea that the infrastructure that you build today can rebuild itself, can transform, and can be agile and adaptive as your business is as well. So more and more our R&D focus is building infrastructure that looks a lot more like cloud than it does like standalone static server. So if you decide to change the business you're in, if you decide to change your business focus, your IT infrastructure can change as well. And that means if you're using public cloud and private cloud, they look more and more the same than they ever have in the past.
That's been critical for us as well. I mean, if you think that classic sort of, there is no one size fits all, right? So I'm often asked, Naren, can we shift our entire business into the public cloud? And the answer is, well, you can certainly aim for that. Why not, right? But what you tend to find is that those commoditized service offerings that the hyperscale providers put forward and make available in the marketplace have shortcomings, right? It's usually around flexibility. And quite often there's touch points that need to live somewhere and typically will live within a private cloud deployment that would be managed by Viatek or similar, right? So having the same flexibility and having that same composable architecture within the data centers that we manage, all powered by HPE, gives us the same flexibility and agility that our customers expect from the public cloud service offerings, right? Hence why you have that perfect mix architecturally as well as service consumption out of the public cloud.
Exactly. So it's all about moving fast, getting lots of visibility and control, and being able to use that to run your business. And that's that IT business alignment piece. That's what composable about. That's what Agile's about. That's what our hybrid strategy is about. So what I wanted to do is share with you an example, a real example of someone you wouldn't really think of as a hybrid IT provider. So almost everybody I deal with, including for our own personal use, we've all got some public cloud and some private infrastructure, right? So for me personally, I've got a lot of computer equipment in my house, but I'm a big user of public cloud storage. Platform of choice is Dropbox. For most people, you've got a bunch of these apps, and they serve a very good purpose. Dropbox themselves are an interesting study. So although they are a purely public cloud offering, their own business is actually has needed to transform over the last couple of years to keep up with their own competitive threats. So if you look at what's going on in their business, you probably know them best from their free or freemium kind of offering. That's the personal one. But actually, their business is growing incredibly quickly, and it's been very successful. Huge numbers of subscribers. And what they've done is pivot into a business model where they can charge more for their product and start to really drive profit. So as a listed entity, they've got shareholders they need to deliver a return to. What's happened to them in the last couple of years is, essentially they used to be a front end for Amazon's public cloud, so Amazon S3 storage. Amazon themselves publicly publish their price list. That's challenging. So Dropbox's biggest partner is also a potential competitor. And in the background, you've got services like Google, like OneDrive, all stepping up, all chipping away with very low-cost offerings. In some cases, no cost. That's a real challenge for a business like that. Dropbox's big challenge is not only are storage prices going down, but their cost of service delivery is going up. Right? They built a business where they want to add lots and lots more features. As they add more features, their cost of service delivery goes up, and their competitive environment, their competitive pricing is coming down. What they needed to do was take cost out, add agility, and do something a little different. So they approached HPE and said, can we look at a hybrid model where we still have a very strong public presence, but where we take some of the more advanced services and some of the stuff that isn't working economically on the public cloud and build our own private environment for that. So we worked with them. We built that environment, and it made a huge difference. And if we look at some of the stats on that, the bulk of their private enterprise users now sit on a private cloud, which does a whole bunch of things for them. In addition to being able to add feature sets, it deals with potential security concerns. But what we really did for these guys was change their speed to market, so added a layer of agility. So they're able to deploy new services much faster than ever before. And we increased capacity and drove cost out. So they used to have 2.5 petabytes in a single rack. Now they can fit 8 petabytes in a rack. Right? So that hybrid of public and private for them helped their business keep going, and it's driven them towards profitability. They're in a really good spot now.
Yeah, and look, you know what? It's I'm often asked, being in the private cloud and hybrid cloud business, How is it that Viatek is able to run a virtual machine within our data centers cheaper than you can run in Azure, right? And for similar sort of reasons that you're describing here, and it often surprises people. It's about trying to find that best value. We know that we can run particular virtual machines in our data center on HPE cheaper, 24/7, than you can run out of Azure, and that's very powerful, which allows us then to position the services as a complement to that, as a logical extension into Azure more appropriately, right?
And we see the same. There are some workloads that are just perfect for public cloud, and there are some that make a lot more sense on private.
Yeah.
Hence the hybrid strategy.
Totally. It's always an interesting conversation with people when you really start to break down where the value sits and why. It's really quite eye-opening.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Naren. Might just pause it there for a moment because we've had a question come through regarding that Dropbox scenario that you described. Is there more detail on why Dropbox decided on a hybrid strategy?
So great question. It's a very common theme for all the people we talk to who have been or have made a big move to public cloud. Often when you look at the first pass financials of public cloud, it looks really cheap. And it takes a bit of usage to realize where the hidden costs are. And again, we spoke as we opened, there are some workloads that work unquestionably well in public cloud. And there are some where once you've been running them for a while, the costs don't quite add up. And for Dropbox, they were in that position. There were certain enterprise workloads where there's a lot of ingress and egress, and you got to pay for that traffic in and out of cloud. So the economics just weren't adding up. So that's one. The other piece was they're trying to sell to high-value enterprise customers. And a lot of those customers, banks or government organizations, are a bit nervous about the fungibility of the public cloud. Where's my data going to be? Am I subject to data discovery acts or different legislation outside of my country? And so they needed a solution for that if they're going to participate in those markets. So those two things combined were kind of the tipping point for them.
Yeah, and I guess similar experience for us is that the more you're able to take advantage of real commoditized services, like truly commoditized service offerings like email, for example, you typically get better economies of scale. And as you move down the stack, from platform as a service to infrastructure as a service, those lines start to blur a little bit, and the cost effectiveness may not necessarily be appropriate within the public cloud. So it's really interesting, and it really is service by service.
Okay. We've had another one come in similar on the same topic. So do you think small businesses in regional areas can see the same benefits as you just described in the Dropbox?
Yeah, I definitely see that. I mean, if we look at Viatek's customer base, our customers range from sort of 5 people accountancy firms, up to sort of 600-700 user, even 1,500 user multi-state environments. And whilst the scale may change, the demands and expectations on us are fairly consistent, right? It's that balance of what can we consume in the public cloud, what can we consume from Viatek for any number of reasons. Data sovereignty was a good one Pat just talked about, affordability, it's about finding the right balance. But fundamentally, and certainly architecturally, our entire business has been built to answer those similar questions in a consistent fashion. And that works very well for us. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Another one here. You mentioned businesses are moving away from hyperscale providers. Can you talk more to that? Why?
Well, I think, it's, when people talk about cloud, I think sometimes the starting position is always, Naren, can we move our entire business into the public cloud? And by all means, start the conversation there. It's always a good place to start. But it doesn't take very long until you start to step back, until you start to realize for all the things that we've talked about, affordability, data sovereignty, egress of data, et cetera, there's any number of reasons why the public cloud might not be appropriate. And we need an answer. And in fact, if I look at our own cloud and hosting business, it's really interesting. So as public cloud consumption has definitely increased across our customer base, it's almost been a linear increase with the private resources that we maintain out of our own data centers. So those hybrid touch points almost go directly in line with the increase in public cloud consumption. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And another one here. Are there any particular security considerations that you need to, consider in the hybrid IT approach you've described?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look. The classic starting position: encryption of data in transit and encryption of data at rest. Any number of ways to carve that out. It's interesting. Sort of going back to my time in London, it was all about the maintenance of private keys, right? So the bank that I work with maintained their own private key infrastructure, and they used that to not only encrypt data in transit, but also encrypt data stores, not just in data centers themselves, be that storage volumes or storage arrays, but also influencing things like the storage volumes for exchange online, for example. So there's absolutely ways to achieve that. It's that classic sort of cost versus reward, right? So, there's any number of ways to architect, and it really just has to be, what can you afford and what's appropriate for your business. But certainly, security concerns, it also was a key influence as to trying to justify moving away from that trusted perimeter, right? If you can absolutely encrypt data using keys that you maintain yourself, well, that is a logical extension of your trusted perimeter, right? So yeah, that's a great question, and it's definitely something it's a well-trodden path now. These aren't new conversations anymore. These classic sort of conversations around how do I secure my workloads and services? It's all possible.
Okay. And last question, unless any more come through. So Pat and Aaron, maybe one for each of you. What are your recommendations on getting started? Like if you wanted to dip your toe in, what are next steps?
I think everybody has a bunch of infrastructure that they're running their business on today. And in our experience, you tend to get stuck in the run, right? So, and we talked about that, right? People are bogged down in the run rather than the transform. Sometimes it just takes another set of eyes to come into the business and say, this one we can manage really easily. You'd be surprised in this day and age how many people I talk to who still have mail service on site. And I kind of look at that and go, well, there's a perfect public cloud. And that was our first example with RBS. There's a great public cloud application opportunity. And the second you start with one, you'll find 3 or 4 that look like a good hybrid, that look like a good option for a private cloud provider. And suddenly we've pulled a bunch of old cost out of the business, and you have only just begun.
But the two conversations I like having, and I'm going to say this with tongue in cheek, but it's to Pat's point, every organisation has some technical debt, right? That's the term I like to use. And what I like about technical debt, it typically carries a degree of shame with it, right? So something in your environment that you're not happy about, often reluctant to talk about, that's held you back. It might have held you back in terms of maintenance, people overhead, or maybe even prevented transformation within the business. To Pat's point around, it's all we can do to keep things running as opposed to really wanting to transform the business. So technical debt's a good one, honing in on call them low-hanging fruit, but those key areas in the environment that really should be transformed and will pave the way for further transformation. Another exercise that I like to undertake is the classic sort of above the line, below the line consultancy that we deliver, which is once you have a picture of what good looks like and you have an understanding of business services and applications and almost the nirvana of how they can be delivered and managed, and typically in a hybrid cloud fashion, then you can start to map out a roadmap. And the above the line, below the line process is basically what infrastructure or services do I get rid of as I introduce new capabilities in the business in order to realise that vision. And that's always quite a useful exercise, and it's something that I'm really happy to have conversations with customers about.
All right. Look, we're heading to time, and no more questions have come in. But certainly, if you wanted to continue the conversation or a question springs to mind, do email them in to us, and we'll have them answered. vtsales@viatek.com.au. Naren's on that distribution list, so he'll be able to jump in and answer your question and continue the conversation. Also, if you're interested in booking or speaking further about that above the line, below the line roadmap session that Naren referred to, we're happy to do that and very experienced at doing that. So contact your account manager or again, vtsales@viatek.com.au. Pat, any final comments? If one last thought you wanted to leave listeners with for the hybrid IT topic?
Look, I think everybody's on a journey, and there's a workload that fits somewhere in there, public or private, and it's worthwhile talking with people who kind of know their way around that. So we've invested heavily in our partnership with Viatek. We have great faith and trust in your team to have those conversations. We're also available as well. So if anyone wants to reach out via your team and come and do a vendor briefing, happy to be part of that as well.
Awesome. And Naren, final comments?
Yeah, look, it all starts with the conversation. You don't know what you don't know, right? So these things are typically fairly enlightening. It's always great, even if it's just a fresh set of eyes of where you might want to go. Just have the chat, reach out to us. That's what we do.
Cool. Connect on LinkedIn.
Certainly.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, for listening. If you head to viatek.com.au on the homepage there, you'll be able to download this session and the previous sessions on SD-WAN and threat defense. And coming up on the 30th, not next Tuesday, the Tuesday after, we'll be talking about the Telstra ISDN shutdown and how you can approach that on your own terms, even though this is a forced change. Okay, that's it from us.
Good stuff.
Thank you all. Thanks, DJ.
Thank you.